following show contains adult content. It's not our intent to offend anyone, but we want to inform you that if you are a child under the age of 18 or get offended easily, this next show may not be for you. The content, opinions, and subject matter of these shows are solely the choice of your show hosts and their guests, and not those of the Entertainment Network or any affiliated stations. Any comments or inquiries should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening.
To the Adventure and Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipeman.
Yo, it's What the Fuck Wednesday here on the Adventures Pipeman, W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. And I got to tell you something. We're broadcasting live today from the Statue of Liberty in France. So let's bring on our pipe nuts and let's find out what they think about that.
Well,
Wait,
then.
Are you still in Louisiana or are you with me in France at the Statue of Liberty, Swamp Nut?
I am everywhere you want me to be, Pipeman.
Have his studio nuts in Wellington, so he doesn't know, but yeah, we're broadcasting live in France from the Statue of Liberty because if any of you read the headlines and not the news and just spread stuff like you do, you probably think right now, but it may come true later down the road because remember, 2016, I did a parody satire thing that, that Trump was going to invade Canada, and here we are. So be careful. The screwed up crap that I say that can't possibly be true just might end up true. So if you heard the news, France wants back the Statue of Liberty. That is true. And the reason they're saying that is because our country does not represent what the why they gave us the Statue of Liberty anymore. And of course,
our like Indian giving.
Well, it is Indian giving, but you know what? It's funny because we're like, no, we're not giving it back. Meanwhile, I think I'm pretty sure that I saw today they just towed the Statue of Liberty out of the New York harbor, and it's right now floating across the ocean on its way back to France.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be
Well, because somebody said, a fearless leader said, you want it, come and get it. Kind of like what happened when we tried to deport people to Mexico and they said, oh, no, you can't do it that way. You know?
Well, you can't actually. So when somebody gives it, I'm trying to stop things from happening here before it gets too bad. So when someone gives you a gift, is it on a borrow system or is it a gift?
Well, let me ask you a question.
Let
me ask you a question, Rebel. In Louisiana, if you gave somebody, let's say, a knife as a gift, and then they became a serial killer and was starting to cut people up with that knife and kill them, would you take back the knife?
Well, no, because it's not mine to take back and they probably need it for evidence. But,
Well,
why would they?
Well, maybe you would, so they would stop killing people. You mean you don't care if they just keep killing people?
It is not my responsibility to take back. Did I give them the
wait
knife
a minute. Don't
people?
you remember Seinfeld when they all got arrested for breaking the Good Samaritan law? Are you one of those people that you hand somebody a knife, they become a serial killer and they start killing people and you're like, yeah, I'm going to turn a blind eye. Not my business.
I'm not going to turn a blind eye, but I mean, depending on who the person was, I might have to give them an alibi or take the knife and hide it as, so it won't be found as evidence. It depends on how you want to look at it, really. It depends on who it is.
Would you have sexual relations with that person?
And depending on who it was and, the reason behind things.
See, and you wonder why I give you crap for having. Oh, never mind. I'm not even going to go there because you know what? I got better things to do because I did an interview yesterday. It was really cool. He's a really, really cool dude. And he also happens to be the host of Ozzy's Boneyard and Hair Metal on Sirius XM. And Rebel, you've been with me a long, long time. Has there ever been a time that you've known me to actually literally promote a show on another station ever on my show?
No.
And that's because he was just a cool dude who also has some new music, okay? Because he's also lead singer, guitarist, songwriter. He's with the Dictators, and he's also, basically just put out his own solo project, okay?
And when's that coming out?
Well, did you read the notes? Like, do your research, Rebel.
I wanted you to tell because you got to You got to do the interview. You didn't invite us to go see him in person. So,
if I send you notes for today's show, okay, you need to pay attention. Okay, so if you read the notes, you would know. Of course, when you've been out partying all night and your eyes are like that. Of course you can't see the notes, okay? But March 21st, it drops. Deco Entertainment. There's a brand new song out. It's a cover, but it's really cool. It brings me back to childhood. And we're going to listen. I can't tell too much because we're going to play the interview. So we'll just talk about it in the interview type of thing, But Superfly. The minute I saw in a press release come to me, because I get the press releases for all new music. I didn't even see his name. I just saw Superfly. I'm like, I'm in. But then I saw his name, and I'm a fan because I actually listened to his show on Sirius XM. So I'm here to say that right now. Keith Roth is a freaking superstar in this industry. And we're about to play the interview that we did yesterday. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about some spots on the Pipeman Radio Tour where we are going to give away tickets. And I'll tell you at the end of the show after the interview how you can win tickets to both Aftershock and Louder Than Life. They're two separate contests, two separate festivals with the most badass lineups ever, including fucking Slayer. Okay? That's at Louder Than Life, though, not Aftershock. That was last year. All right. You know what? Juan, just shut me up and roll the commercials.
Commercials or interview?
Well, the commercials, then the interview, like in the notes I sent you. I thought you were better than Rebel.
Well, you said after the video, play the commercials.
Oh, maybe I did. You know what? Play them now. And yeah, you're right. We'll play the commercials after the interview. You're right. I'm wrong. Roll it.
Darkest night with the moon shining bright. There's a set going strong, a lot of things going on. The man of the hour has an hour of great power. The dudes have envied him for so long. Ooh, Superfly, you're gonna make your fortune bad.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio. And I'm really excited about our next guest because I hate to mention this considering I own a radio station and I'm on my own radio station, but I listen to him all the time on Sirius XM because he's badass, but he's also a badass musician. And he brought me back to my childhood with this new single we have and so we're going to talk about it a little bit. So let's welcome to his show, Keith Roth. How are you?
Pipe man, good to see you, man. Good to catch up with you again. I mean,
absolutely.
And thank you. I'm glad you like the single, man.
It's funny because as somebody in all the stages of rock music, I've pretty much hit most of them. Being born in the '60s, I got the '60s, the '70s, the '80s, and all the way till now. And man, Superfly. I mean, that just, the minute I saw, I didn't even see your name first in the press release. I just saw that, and I'm like, now that's an interview I have to do.
I'm glad you did it. I'm glad we did that song because, I started writing songs, which eventually turned into this album. And we were working with Bob Pantella from Monster Magnet, Atomic Bitch Wax. We always did a lot of recording out of his studios, Freak Shop Studios, which was like being on a galactic spaceship. But I always loved the song, and I had a lot of different people play on this. And I said I always wanted to cover Superfly. I love Curtis Mayfield. I love the film. I love that whole 70s genre. And we just started jamming on it. And Bob laying down that groove, and we kind of tracked it really quickly. And then when he started adding all the percussion in there, and then he's like, all right, man, you should really like go for it with the vocal. And then all of a sudden I'm listening to a rough mix. I'm like, this is on the fucking album. This
nice.
Because I love Curtis. He's been embedded in me. And, so I'm really happy the way the single came out. I mean, a lot of people are like, why are you going to release a cover song for your second single? Because it fits the theme of the album. And it's as you said, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. I love all kinds of music. And I've always, loved all kinds of music. So I think a lot of different influences are all over this record.
I think that's a cool thing about growing through all these decades that really are like where rock evolved over the years, because we got a taste of like just about every bit of it, where I think sometimes people today may not have that taste. I've actually talked to people at festivals that don't even know who Led Zeppelin is, stuff like that, or the Beatles,
Crazy.
It just blows my mind, because it's funny. You take Ozzy as an example, since you're on Ozzy's Boneyard.
Right.
Ozzy is Ozzy because of the Beatles.
No doubt. No doubt. If you talk to Ozzy about the Beatles, now he's interested. Now he'll talk, and he gets excited, and he gets this like, oh, did you hear this record? And he gets, talking about himself, he does it all day, every day. But when you mention the Beatles and you say something really interesting that inspires him, it's a whole different guy, and everything's making sense, So yeah, right, exactly. I mean, it's funny because my neighborhood is kind of like that 70s show, so like all the kids in my neighborhood, they're like 15, 16, their hair's, some of them are hair down to here, and they're walking the streets with boom boxes with their Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd shirts, and I'm like, right on, man, this is great.
Nice.
They got to another generation, and especially with the Zeppelin film. But that's crazy. If you play music or you're going to a festival and you don't know how Led Zeppelin is, you should be escorted out of there.
I know, right? It's wild to me. But then there's the other side, like you're mentioning. It's wild. I'll go to festivals. I'll see kids with like Misfit shirts on or a Pink Floyd shirt on. And I'm like, and they're not just wearing it to wear it because it looks cool. They actually know the music. And see, that's cool to me too, is like you go to a show now or a festival, like in the 80s, I would go to these shows and we were the same age as the bands, and there was nobody older than us there,
Right.
And now you see
we're still younger. We're still the youngest people there.
Right. And now you see these kids that are going to Metallica shows, and I'm thinking to myself, that's badass, because when I was their age, there was no way I was going to see a band that was in their 60s or 50s.
That's true. And, we were talking earlier about, you seeing Metallica out in the Bay, and I saw them first time. And, I know you're a Jersey guy originally. So the first time I saw them was playing a roller skating rink in Old Bridge on Route 9 with Raven. And you saw them out in the Bay, and it was like, I mean, it's cool. And it was a DIY scene that was happening. And I have older brothers that got to see the Dolls at Mercer Art Center. And so I felt like this was like a cool little revolution, but my wildest imagination did I ever think that Metallica would become the next Led Zeppelin. And now you see all these kids and they go there with their parents, and it's like, it's all ages, and it's cool. Also with vinyl, we grew up in that vinyl era, right? Mm-hmm. I love the fact that vinyl has kind of saved the record industry. Sure, a lot of it is reissues, but the younger kids that I talk to or come out to shows, if they don't have it on vinyl, they don't own it. They have streaming services.
I love it.
To see if they're actually going to buy the record, which is kind of cool, because we used to trade cassette tapes, which is, really that different. You know, I can make you a tape of a record I just bought. You throw it in your car. You can listen to it on your stereo. It's a little bit longer to access it, but now I love the fact that vinyl, you know, is resurrected. And the beauty of when we were kids with vinyl, you'd sit there, you read the liner notes, you knew who every producer was, who mastered stuff, and so it's good that kind of infected another generation. A format that we thought was long dead is really the main thing that's keeping the industry alive. You know.
Yeah.
I also have ADHD, so if I went on a whole different tangent, I do apologize.
Oh man, I love that because on my show I always go on different tangent. It doesn't matter. Like if you pick up something, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna run with that. You know, that I think that's the way radio should be anyway. You know, like especially in this arena, you know, it should be just like let it take a life of its own.
Mm-hmm.
Is basically where it comes down, and. Yeah, so my first album ever, here's an interesting story. My first album ever, I won at the Boardwalk in Seaside Heights.
I've heard a lot of people say that, so that's cool. What did you win?
So I saw this album up there, and I was like, man, those fucking dudes look cool. And it was the Kiss original album when it first came out.
My buddy Sean Mars, he plays in a band, Mars. The same exact thing. He won the record at Seaside Heights on the Boardwalk, and it was the first Kiss record. That's amazing, actually.
Right?
How cool is that?
Oh, yeah, and I became a total Kiss freak then after that. And we were talking about the Beatles. First grade, this dude did an oral report on the Beatles. And I was like, oh. And then I became like, I had wall-to-wall posters in my bedroom, but I was like kind of like, I don't know, schizophrenic or something, because one half was totally Kiss and the other half was totally the Beatles. And I always talk to people about how those two bands, people think that they're not related, talking about influences and where people, I found them to be so similar. Like, and I tell people, and they're like, I didn't think of that. You know, how like on every song that John and Paul wrote, it was John Paul. On every song that Gene and Paul wrote, it was Gene Paul. And whoever wrote the songs would sing the songs, you know, and stuff like that. There were so many similarities. And I think that all holds to the evolution to where we are today.
I agree. And the other thing about the Beatles and Kiss is that, you know, each guy, as you saying, sings songs, but also everybody knew all four members. As a Kiss fan, you knew all four. You knew Gene, Paul, Peter, and Ace, and you know, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. I mean, all four characters. You know, a lot of people with Led Zeppelin, they'll know Robert Plant or Jimmy Page. Some may not know John Paul Jones, and
right.
You know, but I mean, with those two, there was a lot of similarities, and of course, you know, the Kiss being huge Beatle freaks. I mean, you know,
exactly there again, you know, and so it's kind of cool. And speaking of school, like years later, I had a history class and I only had one project. It was an oral report. I did on Ozzy.
Black Sabbath, right?
No, Ozzy. It was Ozzy when Blizzard of Oz came out. I had Blizzard of Oz on 8-track, by the way. And and there was a music teacher that took over the history class. So this class was like, he's like, all you got to do is do a report on anything you want, and that's your whole grade for the semester. So I did Ozzy, Satanism in his music.
That sounds great. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I wonder if I even have that somewhere.
And what about metal record too?
I brought in Diary of a Madman with me. I have this shirt that is a Diary of a Madman shirt that I actually put on the back, because remember back in the day we used to put our own art on stuff, and I put in memory of Randy Rhoads. I did get to see Randy Rhoads right before he died, so that was iconic.
I saw Ozzy and Randy. First time I saw them was at the Palladium. You remember the Palladium on 14th Street? Yeah. There was two shows. It was a 5:30 and a 9:30 show. We were young. So the plan was, all right, we'll go to the 5:30 show from Metro Park. We went, you know, Penn Station. We'll walk down to 14th Street. Show will be over by 8 o'clock. You know, our curfew was like 10. I mean, we were young kids. Right. And we saw, you know, Motorhead opening, and you know, reading about them and then seeing them visually, I was like, holy shit, Lemmy from Hawkwind, this band is insane. And then Ozzy with Randy, and we're like, fuck this. I don't care if I'm grounded forever. And then back in those days, I mean, we had really good seats for the 5:30 show, but we went out and scalped for the 9:30 show all the way in the back of the play, and we spent like $20. I mean, that was like kind of a standard thing back then.
Right.
And we watched, and needless to say, when I came home, both my parents were sleeping. I didn't get in any trouble, and neither did my other friend. The other guy that was with us was grounded for like a month. And as a matter of fact, I don't think I ever saw him again. But it was well worth it to see, And so I know what it was like to see Ozzy and Randy. And we didn't have cameras. We just had memories, it was great.
It's funny because I have a similar story. It was one of those things where they were playing, Ozzy was playing New Year's Eve in LA. I think it was at the Forum or something like that. And me and my bro, I said to my dad, yeah, I'm sleeping over so-and-so's house. And he said he was sleeping over my house. And then we went to the Ozzy show. Right. And we came back and we lived in Lake Lindero in Agoura in California. And there was like a hill down to the lake in my backyard. So we just waited down at the bottom, like for my parents and my dad to kind of wake up and like, we were going to come back home or something like shit like that. We were out in the morning or whatever. And my neighbor, this woman comes out. She sees us in all the Ozzy shit. And she goes, did you boys go to the Ozzy show last night? And we're like, yeah. She goes, stay right there. I need to introduce you to my husband. And we're like weirded out because my next door neighbor, we're going to get in trouble, man.
Right.
And then the husband comes out. Yeah, the husband comes out. He invites us up to the house, brings us in his studio, which was wall-to-wall cassette tapes. He was fucking Ozzy's promoter.
Oh, really?
Right next door to me. I never knew. And so he's like giving us swag and all this stuff. And I'm like, it was like the coolest experience ever. And then he hands me this cassette tape. And he said, this band is going to be in America in like 6 months. Nobody knows about them yet here. I'm giving you the demo tape, and they're going to be huge. And that was Accept, Fast as a Shark.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. And that was a heavy record too, man. I remember being pretty floored when I heard that album. And it's, that was really cool and unique at that point. It took them a while to catch on. And what's funny is, you being a Jersey guy, Mark from TT Quick has been singing with them for so many years. And I just saw them on not this Monsters of Rock, the last, and I, for the first time, ironically getting to see him with Mark. You would have thought I saw him sooner, but I didn't. And to me, they were even better than
nice.
But yeah, of course, man, that's pretty cool when you have a neighbor that could turn you on to bands months before the record comes out.
Right, and I was like, I don't know.
And you could always blame them now.
Say that again.
No, I'm saying, if you went to the Ozzy show, you're just like, oh, the neighbor gave me stuff. Our neighbors is, he works promotions for him. Yeah, no, Dad, we didn't go to any show. Our neighbor, and you got somebody cool to vouch for you, which is always a great thing.
Totally. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you too is, what's it like to be the musician and the radio jock?
I've been a musician as far back as I can remember. And, I never had any aspirations to do radio, to be honest with you. And a woman, Amy Christie, who used to run a rock magazine, in New York and New Jersey, she came out and did a story on a band I was playing with in the 90s. And then she moved, and then I was living in Long Branch, New Jersey at that point. And she moved down to that neck of the woods, and there was a radio station opening called The Rat.
I remember The Rat.
Still there, a lot of the same crew. And she said, would you be interested in doing a radio show with me? I've been talking to the general manager, and my first reaction was like, no, I don't want to like front and back sell like, hey, Memorial Day weekend, the big 9 with Van Halen or Korn coming up, No, she's like, no, we could, play whatever we want as long as there's no obscenity, and we can, and between the people we know, we could bring bands down. And so we went into this meeting. I never expected to get it. My daughter was just born. I dropped her on the table at this big meeting. They want to meet with us. And for some reason, the great Dan Finn said, I have a feeling about you guys. And he took a chance, and we did that show. I ended the show back in July of 2024, but that was in like 98. And, throughout the years, we had the Ramones come down, Joey and those guys, and Johnny, Alice Cooper, John Paul Jones. I mean, the Kinks, because we knew a lot of people, and they loved doing the show because it's kind of like this,
Yeah.
we could talk for 40 minutes and then catch up on all the commercials. We had that time, and it resonated. So from doing that, and then I get a call when I want to do a punk rock show for Sirius Radio. And I had never heard of satellite radio. I thought it was like Wayne's World. Like, honestly, what the fuck is satellite radio? And they're like, oh, you could do a punk show and you could do a weekend on First Wave and Left to Center. And I have no idea what they're talking about. But to be honest, the bread was good enough to come into the city. And they said it would be 1 day a week, 5 hours, whatever. So I come in for an interview, and I walked in. And when I got off the elevator and I walked through that glass door, and growing up on New York legends like Meg Griffin and Carol Miller and Pat St. John, they were all there. And wow. And I'm like, I better educate myself quickly. So that's how I started. I did a punk show called the Punkyard, and then which led me doing the Boneyard, which became Ozzy's. No, it was Buzzsaw, which became Ozzy's Boneyard. And then Meg Griffin, who I'm very close with, she connected me, even though I was friendly with David Johansen, but having the honors of produce and engineer his show and for over 20 years. So, that's how I got into radio, but a musician. And it's funny because people who only know me as a musician, and there's people that only know me from radio. So with the solo record, I guess the hope is to bring them all together. Like, all right, we know Keith Roth from so-and-so, Frankenstein 3000 or the Johansen Group, whatever they know me for. And from, that's the dude from Ozzy's Boneyard or whatever. So hopefully it could expand the audience with just simply being Keith Roth. But it is a personal record. So, but that's why it's just under my name for this one.
And tell us more about the record. Okay, we talked a little bit about Superfly, but give us a little insight on the rest of the record and, what came from inside.
Well, I also play in a band called the Dictators that have been around since the 70s. And so it was a really, really great time, as an artist, because they had wanted to put together a Frankenstein 3000 compilation, which just came out, called Lost in Space Volume 1. So I was really digging through the vaults and tweaking stuff on that. And the Dictators were in the thick of making a new record. And I was really prolific in writing. But all these songs didn't make sense for the Dictators or Frankenstein. So I went to my buddy Mike Jaffe. I'm like, I got a group of songs. What do you think of these? And he's like, these are really cool. And he has a studio. And he's like, let's work them out. And then we went into Bob Pantella's and we started recording stuff. But I just knew that these songs were more personal, more me, and a lot of different variety. And plus, when it's your name, you could do Superfly, or you could do something that somebody said the other day sounded like the band Luna, which I loved, or or just like a rock song like the opening track, Don't Feel Like Thinking Today. But it's there's a theme in my head. It's a concept record. You have to kind of jump in to see what it's all about. And having a lot of great people help me out on it, like obviously playing with Ross the Boss from the Dictators and working with Punky Meadows in the past. Him and Danny are on there, and Albert Bouchard lays down some drums, and Bob from Monster Magnet, who I've done a lot of work with throughout the years. And it's one of those records, and you don't cherry pick it. You just hit play, and it's a musical journey. And if I'm happy with it, to be honest, that's the one thing I learned many years ago is I never really was into following trends. I mean, if you look at my musical history, none of it matches up to what was going on at that point. You know what I mean?
I love it.
In the 90s, it was punk rock, and then a band I was in called Bad Biscuit. We were very punk rock, and for the time, and then a lot of it kind of sounded like what Green Day did a few years later. But after, I became really happier when I just wanted to do my own thing, and that kind of, and stopped listening to a lot of stuff. I just was into my own thing for a while. And, the bands that I grew up with, as you were saying, like those are the really, around 87, 88 is when I really got out of, a lot of the metal stuff that was going on. And I reverted back to all the stuff that my brothers played around the house. And I grew up in the Bronx. So I thought everybody knew who the MC5 were, and the Stooges, and David Peel on the Lower East Side. And nobody really knew. It was fortunate that this little area, people knew this kind of music. And then around 88, everything got so homogenized that I just reverted as a complete throwback. And, of course, along the way, you discover great bands like Red Cross or people that are doing stuff out of the box. But, that's, and being on, Ozzy's Boneyard, I mean, that's the stuff I grew up on. I mean, that was me and my buddies, keg parties in the woods, Black Sabbath, right. And Guns N' Roses. I love Guns N' and of course, David Johansen who turned out to be one of my greatest friends ever. And his passing still devastates me. But, all that 70s New York glam stuff and English glam stuff and punk rock, that's really what I listened to from 88 till now.
It's funny you mentioned about your brothers, because there's some bands I've interviewed that I tell them, like I did the John Lodge from the Moody Blues recently. And I was the reason I took this interview is because I used to steal my brother's album of yours and listen to it all the time, and that is the cool thing today, is like we were saying before, it's like we have this history of different types of music throughout our life. It doesn't mean we didn't like all different types. It just means there were so many different trends and things that I think we're more well-rounded because of it in a musical sense. It's like, I can sit there and I could go listen to Earth, Wind and Fire and then go listen to Slayer.
Exactly. I mean, and that's, the beauty of going record shopping. When I was a kid, I remember there was a record store in Co-op City in the Bronx. And, it was a big treat, my mom giving me $10 and, be able to go buy 2 records. I remember one time buying Diamonds Are Forever soundtrack with the Hughes Corporation. And I think it might have been Aerosmith Rocks, all on the same day or whatever. I've always been a James Bond collector, but I mean, and nobody judged anything. That was cool. Like Miles Davis said, man, cool. Good music is good music, no matter what kind of music it is. And I think for me, like to 1981 really kind of felt like a lot of great bands, a lot of great stuff that came out after, but a lot of the originality kind of ended there, because everything you hear after that, after the Beatles and the Stones and the Who and, the punk rock and, bands out of Detroit. I mean, sure, some of it's played faster, some of it's played electronic, some of it, and even rap music back then, the Sugar Hill Gang, that was all incorporated from 81 down. So, people, pushed it a little forward and, and did some great stuff with it. But to me, that was kind of like the last year of originality. I know people will love to argue with me about that, but that's how I feel.
Hey, I see, that's what's cool about Jersey boy or Jersey girl, is like, you're going to know where you stand regardless, and I'd rather people speak their mind. Like, I think even if you're the artist that they're speaking about, like if I were the artist, I would listen to it and go, well, maybe I should evaluate some things. I think you learn more from your critics than the people that love you.
That's true. As long as they're honest, right?
Yeah. And they're not being dicks about it and just being honest. That's all.
Yeah.
And it's so funny you mentioned Sugar Hill Gang, because I remember being in 7th grade and my bro playing Rapper's Delight when it first came out. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. And who would have known we would be where we are today with that kind of music?
Yeah, I mean, I got to throw Run DMC in the mix because they were very revolutionary, and they were past 81. I mean, of course, there's some things, Melly Mel and, Grandmaster Flash, and then, and the soul music of the 60s, I mean, I love it all. I mean, people would be shocked if they were around my house and see what I listen to, and, I mean, right now, I think it's probably XTC and some kind of 70s blaxploitation soundtrack, or Funkadelic or Parliament, or or Black Sabbath, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, that's the beauty, and that's why you do such a great show, because you get all that stuff.
Well, I also look at what you're saying is it's the musicianship. I think there was a lot more musicianship, even with metal nowadays. Like some of these bands, I think to myself, man, metal was never an algebraic equation. It's like they use an algebraic equation to write the song. Mm-hmm. Whereas like songs just used to be written from the heart, and like it was a story, and then the musicianship was important, not a
people
formula.
People really good back then, and the people we looked up to, you thrived to be good, like good. I never thought I was good until like 10 years ago. That's when I was like, yeah, I'm actually good now. It took a long time to get there, even though I was on the path. But I mean, because some of the, I mean, I play in clubs where guys like Zakk Wylde and, Dave DiPietro and, guys, these guys, incredible talents. And I mean, in Jersey, there's so many talented guys, and it took me a long time to feel like I was on the level with those guys, but it always kept the strive in us. But, and then again, my punk rock roots, it's like, I knew how to play I auditioned for the Ramones. Somebody just interviewed me about this. Wow. And I was one of a few people that got a second audition. There's a Ramones documentary coming out soon that they talked to me about it. But when I was able, how I learned how to play is the first Ramones record. If you switch the balance one way, it's just bass. All you can hear is bass, and you switch it the other way. And I was just content, being a punk rock kid and loving that. But the older I think, I still, and to this day and age, I practice more now than I did when I was a kid. And I it's like running, man. You got to run every day to keep, your chops up.
That's where you're smart, because I played drums for 9 years. I played guitar and I sang thrash metal, and I sucked at all three. And there was one common ingredient. I didn't have that dedication to practice. Like, I remember reading about Randy Rhoads back then. He practiced like 8 hours a day. I'm like, I'm not fucking practicing 8 hours a day.
You got to practice when it doesn't feel like practicing. You know what I mean? Especially, I was content being, a songwriter, writing punk tunes, and it was cool. But I'm like, not in the league of these guys. But then, you over time, it just naturally happens. And I remember playing with Punky Meadows. They're like a progressive, and that was a real challenging gig. But really, after doing that, and you work, you're as good as who the people you play with. I've noticed too, especially drummers. I mean, the band. If you have a great drummer, the band is great. If you have a shitty drummer, the band sucks. I mean, it's as good as the people you play with. So as a musician, you're going to be as good as whoever, what the band sounds like. And Punky was a great example of that, because those guys were all really great players and playing some really great, intricate stuff. So that I don't find it challenging. I find it fun. It's like,
Yeah, see?
But, I think through COVID was probably the most I played guitar in my whole life. And, I mean, being stuck in the house and not because I felt like I needed to practice. I just got into playing. Like, I fell in love with playing guitar, which I never did. I used it as a tool to write songs, but I really got it. And also being in a band with Ross the Boss from the Dictators. I mean, he's an incredible motherfucking guitar player. He's one of the best out there. So
nice.
He keeps pushing me, and it's fun. I mean, at my ripe old age of 27, I feel.
And I do love that you mentioned COVID, because I've said for a while now that if you're going to pick a positive to come out of COVID with, is that bands and artists had a chance to jump off the hamster wheel and actually go back to being creative and having the time to really, that I think some of the best music we're ever going to have might come out of that time because of it.
I agree with you. I mean, the COVID thing was very odd for me, because I definitely suffered some PTSD during it, because every year we played the Lou Reed birthday party, March, Bowery Electric. We did it for a few years in a row, and we played a show on March 1st, and the great Hal Wilner was there, Lou Reed's producer, and SNL, and a couple weeks after the show, and also we had played Michael Alago's book signing, and we just started hearing about COVID. And then I got a call like a week or two after that gig that Hal Wilner had passed away. And I was like, oh, I'm really, and he said, he died of COVID. And, just seeing this guy a few weeks ago, and what a talent. And then all of a sudden the floodgates open, a lot of guys in New York City, Alan Merrill, Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne, a neighbor 4 doors down, a guy in great shape in his 40s. And all these people were dying. Like my friend, Tony Donato, like within a 4-day period, just hearing these. So I thought, like, all right, fasten your seatbelts, man. This is like 70s sci-fi and really like sad, like great, and what they were saying on the news about, if you're set in your late 60s and you have I wasn't seeing that. I mean, sure, some of them were, but the majority of them were that first strain was so freaking strong. And then I think it went from Seattle to New York, and it took down a lot of great people. And I know people today that are just getting over it, that had that first strain, people that. So
I got it in January of 2020 from doing a red carpet at the Oscars.
Wow. I mean, did you have a really tough time with it or no?
I was in LA. I live in Florida. I was at my bro's house. He was nervous because I'm the type of person, if I have 104 temperature and pneumonia, I'm still going 100%. I did not leave the room for like 3 days. I was dying. And then I came out. I was like, I finally feel like I'm a little alive. And then a day later, it went back to worse again. You know how that first strain was. And then when I got back to Florida, I was supposed to go to Costa Rica in a week to go surfing, and I was still feeling like crap, and I couldn't breathe, and so I finally went to a doctor, and on my record it literally says unidentified organism. They didn't even know what the hell it was.
They had no idea. Yeah.
No, it was, and so then I went to Costa Rica, came back, and 3 days later we were locked down.
Yeah. It was. I was in the city the night that the lockdown kicked in. I mean, ironically, I was on the Lower East Side and playing a lot around that March frame, but, you know, starting to hear about Seattle and, you know, even my daughter, who's a nurse, I mean, and she's a runner. She runs. So she's like you in the sense that, you know, you have to be like completely like paralyzed to not do it. And she was like, you know, Dad, I can't breathe. And I got this fever. And this was like in February. And I took her to the doctor, and nobody knew what was wrong with her. And then they said, "Is your dad cool?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's cool." He's like, "You might be, maybe you're pregnant," right?
Oh my God.
And then I left the room, but she had antibodies. So I'm thinking she may have had, you know, before it was really announced what it was, but it was just devastating because we lost so many great people during that. I mean, I've had it myself, you know, maybe a year after. I really didn't have a hassle with it. And as a matter of fact, all the Dictators, we all got it together. And, you know, it's like a bad, to me, every time I get it. I just got off the Monsters Rock cruise, so I'm waiting for it to kick in. But it's like, it's just that headache is the worst part of it. You know?
Oh, no doubt. I had it 2 other times after that. My grandkids gave it to me.
Oh.
And it was pretty easy the 2 other times, I can say.
Well, you're a pro.
But I'm so glad that live music is back and better than ever in some cases. And like, here's the thing. I think people going to festivals and concerts were complaining way too much before COVID, that hopefully it changed their opinion. And just because I don't care now if some kid's up there playing a recorder, I want to be at a live show. I don't want to ever miss one again.
It was so rewarding when the floodgates opened and going out and playing again. You know, it was amazing. You know, I think the first thing I did is, you know, Mark Weiss, the photographer. He's a good. He did this event at some little theater in Middletown, and I have a cover band that I play, you know, in the Red Bank area, and we played, and we had people like Bumblefoot and Carmine Apiece. Anybody wanted to do anything at that point. And it was just great to see people again and being outside, and then, you know, shortly going out with the Dictators out to Canada and just getting back into the groove of it. You know, I mean, listen, a lot of that stuff too is you really should throw yourself into it and, you know, let your body do its own business and get through it. And but when the floodgates opened up, I mean, that was great. And I don't even think about that anymore, to be honest.
No, not at all. Not at all. I love that we're just living life again, and, you know, great music, so much great music is out there because of it, including your new album dropping on March 21st, couple days, the Law of Diminished Returns through Deco Entertainment. I am so excited about this because for those people out there that maybe have not heard you as the musician, or you've never put anything solo out, they need to get this album because it is badass. Tell everybody how they can get it, how they can, you know, the types of packages that they can get, vinyl, whatever, your socials, everything they need to know.
I'm kind of anti-social media, no, but I mean, in all serious, decoentertainment.com, you could get the vinyl. I think there's limited edition blue vinyl that really looks amazing. The CDs and streaming come out on Deco Entertainment, you know, Amazon. I just did a Talk Shop Live. I know they got some signed copies of the vinyl and the CD, talkshoplive.com, decoentertainment.com, Amazon, you know, streaming on all your favorite platforms, wherever you stream music. So check it out. Hopefully you like it. And, you know, thank you, man. Thank you for, you know, talking about the record. I really appreciate that, Pipe, man.
Oh, absolutely. And the first single you put out in December, that speaks to me. I don't feel like thinking today. I think lately I've been feeling that a lot.
You know, I wrote that song in 3 minutes. I did.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those days where, you're in these text groups with friends and they're fighting about this and that and politics and all this stuff. And then you're going through the news and this and that, this one, and it was just, and then people, other drama, it has nothing to do with anything. And I literally just said, man, I just don't fucking feel like thinking today. And I'm like, that's a pretty good song title. And then I just grabbed the guitar, came up with the riff, and I was like, it just came out of me. And most of the verses that I scattered away became a lot of the end. But it's a very poppy, fun song. But there's some real honesty in those lyrics about, just what was going through my head for that timeline at that point. But yeah, I think there's another song that's only available on the CD, and I don't even think it's going to be streaming, but that's going to be a release, because now with the record dropping on Friday, it's just those two singles, but that one's going to come out after the fact, and I think we're going to do a video for that. But yeah, listen, at this point, I know every bell and whistle on the record, so I'm ready to do another one.
I love it. Any final thoughts you want to give us on the record or anything you got coming up?
Yeah, well, as Keith Roth, I got some shows coming up with Foghat. That should be an interesting, fun. And I know Roger for years, so I know we're playing May 17th in Patchogue, New York. I know the Dictators were on Little Steven's cruise, which is in May. We're looking way forward to that with Social Distortion and the Helicopters and X. And there's other stuff popping up, but Dictators dates will probably be announced before we get on the cruise. As getting back to me with the solo stuff, some shows with Foghat, but there's a lot of stuff that's kind of culminating right now. So over the next couple of weeks, a lot more info. But you can find me on Facebook, Keith Roth, the Dictators site. Keeps in the loop, and of course you can listen to me every day rant and rave on Ozzy's Boneyard and Hair Nation, and finally the David Johansen tribute that me and Meg Griffin are doing is airing on Wednesday. I don't know when this is airing, so but that airs Wednesday 11 p.m. East on the Spectrum channel 28, and it's me and Meg talking about personal stories with David and sharing some of our favorite songs, and I think it'll probably be on demand after that as well.
Nice. Well, we'll make sure to air this so that they can catch that and get your album and all that good stuff. And you are badass.
And you are badass. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And hey, thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
I hope to be back again, Pipeman. Thank you, bro.
I hope you are too. And I'm sure you will. And now I got to go do my live show. So we'll talk more, and we'll promote the shit out of this on my show, because you're just the all-around music person, and everybody needs to, if they don't know you, they need to get to know you, and at the very least, go get the album.
Thank you for spreading the word, man. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you before the interview and now, and the Pipeman, rock and roll, my brother.
Louder Than Life, America's loudest festival, returns to Louisville this September with Slayer, Deftones, Avenged Sevenfold, Bring Me the Horizon, plus Sleep Token, Suicide Boys, Bad Omens, Rob Zombie, A Perfect Circle, Marilyn Manson, Evanescence, Knocked Loose, 3 Days Grace, Lamb of God, and so many more. Louder Than Life. September 18th through 21st in Louisville, Kentucky. Passes are on sale now at louderthanlifefestival.com. Aftershock Festival returns to Sacramento for its biggest year yet with Blink-182, Deftones, Korn, Bring Me the Horizon, plus A Perfect Circle, Bad Omens, Rob Zombie, Good Charlotte, Turnstile, Gojira, Marilyn Manson, Knocked Loose, 3 Days Grace, and so many more. Aftershock, October 2nd to 5th at Discovery Park in Sacramento. Passes are on sale now at AftershockFestival.com.
Man, I gotta say, I'm pumped about those two festivals, because they have, each one of them, some of my favorite all-time ever bands. And so here's what you gotta do, people. You can win tickets to Louder Than Life. You can win tickets to Aftershock. All you have to do is DM me, Pipeman Radio, on any of my socials, and in your DM, tell me for that specific festival that you're looking to win tickets, because you can only win to one. Tell me what you think are my 5 favorite bands to see at that specific festival. And you'll be, whether you're right or wrong, you'll automatically be entered to win weekend passes. Okay. Man, these are two of my favorite festivals to cover. They have two of my favorite lineups this year, and that is badass as shit. And then, okay, make sure tonight to catch that show Keith was talking about. And so, Rebel.
Yes.
Uh-oh, she's scared.
I'm not scared.
Juan,
He was
you heard
so
how
cool.
she responded. Was she
Yep.
scared?
Absolutely.
Right? See. Okay. So,
I was not
Rebel.
scared. Yes.
What do you think of that interview?
He is so cool. You are so lucky to have interviewed him.
I know,
He's got
right?
it going on.
Here was what was cool too, is
What?
how you like at the end. I said I have to go to my live show, and literally we're back to it, the live part of it. It was like I planned it out, and I didn't.
It's a show within a show.
I know, right? It's the show within the show. You know what else it is?
What?
Fucking Slayer. No, it's more like what the fucking Slayer.
There you go.
All right. So, any final words from you guys? Anything else you want to comment about the interview or the Statue of Liberty or snails?
Make sure to buy the album on the 21st.
Good job, Rebel. You finally read the notes.
I didn't read the notes. I listened to him.
Oh, man. So, did you know, not that you should do this, but did you know what happens if you pour salt on a snail? Do not try this at home.
Doesn't it come out of its shell? Or doesn't it die?
Yeah, it melts. It like bubbles up and melts. How weird is that?
That's horrible. Why would you tell people that? Do
I'm
not
telling
do
them
that
so
at
they
home.
don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling them so you don't. Why? Listen, because if I didn't tell them the answer, they'd be like, "Ooh, I'm curious. I'm gonna."
Now
try
they know
this
what
thing."
happens. You
Do
made it
not
sound fun.
Try this at home, no matter
Don't
who
do
you
it.
are.
Don't do it.
How about this? One last thing, and then we'll go, Rebel.
Okay.
Is this something you do in Louisiana? What happens when you combine a magnifying glass with ants?
They burn up.
Oh, look, she's done that. That's how. Look
I
at how quick
have
you knew that.
people do it.
Yeah, you can't see. Look at those glasses you're wearing. What are you gonna do?
Perfectly fine.
That's how wild
know why I
cards are.
Okay, what dots, but not perfectly.
You know what I loved most of all about today's show?
That
Is that while I was doing that interview,
Uh-huh.
I went downstairs, and like this is the first time there was waves in forever. And so I during the interview, I'm back and I'm looking, I'm seeing people surfing down there. So I decided, oh, I got some time. And I went down, surfed a few waves, and we're back ready to close the show out.
Oh, you are so lucky. Look at you.
Yeah.
Well, it's time to go rock and roll, people.
It actually takes me longer than that to get down 36 flights of stairs.
If you got to walk down them, I'm sure.
I do
Talk
run
about
down
going with the
stairs.
flow.
Yeah, I do run down the stairs though. Up the stairs, not so much, but down the stairs.
It's a lot faster if you just jump off the balcony. I'm just saying.
I tried it,
Don't do
but
that.
Just surfboard on the feet already. Just
no, the cord to my mic actually almost choked me. Because
Don't-
that's what I did. I figured it would be quicker if I just hopped on my surfboard and like glided through the air down onto the waves.
Do not
But-
try that at home, people.
There-
Do
there are
not
some-
try that at home. Please, this is your PSA warning for the end of the show. Do
What
not
the
try
fuck,
that at home.
Rebel? What the give them a quicker way to get down to the water?
You cannot jump off a balcony, especially a balcony on the 30-something floor, and
Like-
land on a surfboard in the water. Don't do it. Do
No.
not encourage people to do that. Stop.
I've seen the guys at Red Bull do way worse.
Exactly.
Well,
Come on, Rebel. There's
please.
people that do way worse.
Do not reenact
I
Jackass.
mean, look
okay?
at you.
Just saying
Look at you, Rebel. The things you do.
the things I
you know,
do.
you're
I don't
teaching
think
people. Yeah, you're teaching
No.
people some really heinous stuff. Okay, I'm just
I
saying.
do not teach people heinous stuff. I'm not the one talking about jumping off of a 30-something floor balcony on a surfboard. But with that note, I gotta go, and so do we. Ciao, baby.
Yes, we do. We do.
Radio.
Okay, but before we go, I'm just going to say, people, we have a special episode tomorrow. We don't normally do on Thursday. Tomorrow we have a special episode. You're not going to want to miss it. You're going to want to tune in. 1 p.m. Eastern time, same pipe channel, same pipe time, right here on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Now, I'm going to go back to the surf. Roll it, Juan.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.